Okay, welcome. Yes, please, what were you saying? We're discussing muktzah here.
The svara for
Yeah.
a kli onward, something that I can use as a kli.
Yes.
Fine, I can understand that. What you're saying is that prior to that, she creates. Before it becomes a kli, it is
Nothing.
a nothing, and nothing by definition is muktzah. I can't use it.
Yeah. You should be handling it on Shabbos.
Shouldn't be handling it on Shabbat. But what happens if I could use it?
If you could use it. So that is something we're going to see in the Gemara here, that even if you could use it, you still cannot. Okay? If it's not nish kind of kli, unless it's for kvoda brios. So Chazal give the example. A rock. So that's why we should see in the Gemara inside. Now let's see. That's the whole point of what Rav is saying here. So I'll read it now. Shalach le Rava berei de Rabba le Rav Yosef. Rava, son of Rabba, sent to Rav Yosef. So this isn't regular Rava. Okay? This is not regular Rava. Okay? They're not the Rava. Rav Yosef, berei de Rabba, sent to Rav Yosef. So apparently a generation later. Okay? Yilamdenu Rabbeinu. Machat shnital charara o uksa mahu. You have the machat. We mentioned the Mishnah, machat shel yad, which means a sewing needle. Sewing needles has a technology that's existed for many thousands of years, and it hasn't actually changed that all that much. What's a sewing needle? It's a needle. It has one end that's pointy, and the other end has a hole, what we call in English the eye. One threads the thread through the eye and ties a little knot, and then he's able to pull the thread through. Many of you know how to sew. I don't, but that's what you do. Okay? It's very simple. So they wanted to know, this needle has had a little bit of a difficult life. It's no longer pointy, so it can't be used for sewing. Or the eye is broken, so it can't hold the thread, so it can't be used for sewing. So what do you do with such a thing? Can you handle it on Shabbos? Amar le, so Rav Yosef's answer was...
Before you get there, what are these two sides to analyze?
Perhaps you could say, well, it still has some sort of function. Just because it doesn't have an eye, I could still poke with it. Or just because it doesn't have a hole, I could still thread with it and pull a thread through of a hole. There might still be something. Okay? Yeah. So he says, Machat shel yad litol ba'asakot. Rav Yosef said that this machat shel yad is still good for removing splinters. Okay? They actually say it's better to use a tweezer, but either way. The last time I took out a splinter, I used a machat shel yad. Okay? So it works. Old technology. Just put some alcohol on it beforehand. So that was what the Mishnah said. You can handle a sewing needle on Shabbos. Oh, but a sewing needle is used for sewing. It's like a pen. I'm not supposed to be writing on Shabbos. I shouldn't be handling a pen. I shouldn't be hammering nails on Shabbos, so I shouldn't be handling a hammer, right? But no, I could use the hammer to break nuts, and I could use that pen, I don't know, scratch my back, whatever it might be. So too, I could use a sewing needle to pull out, a splinter. That's what the Mishnah says. And Rav Yosef continues and says, so the fact is that you're using the pokey end of this needle, of the broken needle, to get out your splinter. That's permissible on Shabbos, and the splinter doesn't care if the eye is functional or not. Okay? Which means that the Mishnah, when the Mishnah gave a permission to handle the sewing needle on Shabbos, the Mishnah's implication is that even if the sewing needle is not the best needle for actually sewing, it might not even work for sewing. As long as it still has some function for you right now, it still is considered a kli. Okay? And therefore you can handle it for this this need on Shabbos. You get the question?
That goes against what you just said a moment ago. No?
No, not yet.
It's not a kli.
Not yet.
Not yet.
You're asking the Esvei.
At this point, I'm trying to do that. You just told me that anything prior Shute creates a broken kli. It can't be.
I told you the bottom line, and now we're digging the Gemara. Now we have to get to the Kashya. That was Rav Yosef's initial answer. Okay, so the Esvei is Machat Shenita Charara Ukta Tahora. For example, they're talking about with regards to Mantara. There's a halacha, only Kalim can contract impurity. And once a kli is broken, it's no longer a kli, and it cannot become impure. Not only that, if it was impure, it was contaminated with something, the act that makes it not a kli also purifies it. Okay? If you had a cup, for example, that got contaminated ritually, then poking a hole in the bottom of the cup such that the cup cannot contain wine anymore, you pour wine in, eventually it starts dripping out, and then it's all empty. So now it's not this kind of cup. The contamination has left the cup, and the cup is now pure because it's not a kli. So the connection here would be that just like the fact that the eye of the needle is broken makes the needle no longer a kli with regards to impurity, so too this needle is no longer a kli on Shabbos with regards to halacha Shabbos, and therefore this kli should not be handled. You want to take out your splinter, get yourself something that's still halachically a kli and not a broken needle. So Abaye doesn't like this answer. Basically, let's say this bottom line. Now that I gave this ace bay, I've been consistent with my introduction and with what we're seeing in the Gemara. And Abaye doesn't like this kasha. He thinks that the kasha goes too far. Why? Omar Abaye, Tuma Shabbos Karamis. You're comparing Tuma to Shabbos and even challenging the laws of Shabbos from Tuma. Tuma and Shabbos have different standards. Tuma Kli Maaseh Be'inon. With regards to contamination, the standards of whether or not this is a kli depends on its functionality. Kli maaseh, can you actually do something? And a needle without an eye, even though it's still quite pokey and sharp, you sharpened it yesterday, it still doesn't have an eye, so there's no way you're going to use it to thread the thread. Le'inyan Shabbos, midi dechazi ba'inam. With regards to Shabbos, whether or not it can handle the kli, as long as it can accomplish something. Midi dechazi, okay? And this needle, despite its eyelessness, still is nice and sharp, so you can use it to take out the splinter. So you have a problem. So we stand with Rav Yosef's answer. This is still preliminary. We haven't had the bottom line yet. Okay, but Rava says, Omar Rava, man de kamosiv shaper kamosiv. The kasha is actually pretty good, Abaye. Okay, the one who makes this brings up the distinction is actually, the contradiction or the challenge. He's doing a good job at that. Midila inyan tuma lav manahu, because when we look at the laws of tuma, we understand that this sewing needle is not a kli. Mana is a kli. So too on Shabbos, it's not a kli. Inyan Shabbos nami lav manahu. Okay, it's not a mana. And Rava doesn't necessarily agree with Rav Yosef's answer of the question. Rava would say, if you want to take out a splinter on Shabbos, go find yourself a kli to do it. A kli that maybe even something that you shouldn't be handling on Shabbos min hastam, because it's a kli that's used for muktzah, like a sewing needle. But get yourself a sewing needle that could also actually serve as a sewing needle and not one that is already, invalidated from sewing. That's what Rava would say here. So there's another challenge here. Meisvei, machat, bein nekuva, bein she'ena nekuva. Oh, a source says, whether the needle has a hole or not, right? Mutter l'taltala b'Shabbos. So you can handle that on Shabbos for the right reasons. This is not a blanket heter, but generally speaking, it is now a kli. V'lo amru nekuva el inyan tuma bilvad. The only time they bring up this distinction, whether a needle has a proper hole or not, an eye, is with regards to tuma. But with regards to Shabbos, even needles without eyes are considered kalim, and therefore can be handled when there is an appropriate need. Rashi adds over here, Lio Torat Kli Aleha, Yoter Misha Ein Nekuva, Elul Inyan Tuma. Rashi says, what are they saying? The eye is what makes it a kli. Okay? Before a needle has an eye, it's not going to be able to contract impurity. The kosok daitach did natal chor shala kamar. And now we're discussing what? Something happened, it's no longer pointy. The linyan tuma batel shem kli mina ultitul sharei. And now it's not a kli with regards to tuma qualifications, but you can still possibly handle it. So Abaye says something interesting here. Tirgama Abaye liba de Rava. Abaye had already offered an answer, right? Abaye's answer was rejected by Rava. What's Rava saying? Rava says one standard for both Shabbos and Tuma. If something is a kli that is susceptible to Tuma, So too, it is a kli regarding Shabbos. And if it's not a kli that is susceptible to tuma, then it is not a kli on Shabbos. Consequence? No, that's Rava. That's Rava. Okay? Rava held to the standard. So Abaye is now going to answer this challenge. He's stepping into Rava's shoes. Tirgama Abaye, Aliba de Rava. Okay? Abaye, who's very sharp. Okay? Abaye himself is like a needle. He's the human needle with regards to Talmud. Okay? So Abaye is saying that Rava would say, the Golmeas Kinon. Okay? This case that we just brought up, that it doesn't matter if the needle is Nekuva or not, has a hole or not, is talking about what? Golmei. What are Golmei? Nowadays, Golmei means unfinished. Okay? Sometimes it means raw materials. Okay? And sometimes it means the Kli before it has been finished. Okay? So it's technically raw material. Or he talks about, you could take, they had, Golem was a ball of clay. Right? Just a ball of clay. So, and then it's been given sort of a preliminary form, but it's not finished yet, right? So that's the ideal case, and that's why they have the idea of a man created from dirt, through magic. That's a golem, no neshama in there, just form, no spirit. So, what does he say? Gome machatin ha'omdot lina cave. Okay, what do you have? Apparently, when they make needles, I don't know if this is still the same case in the needle factory, so you could go, if you're searching for a haystack in the needle factory, go see. They made the sharp part of the needle first, and then the hole punch part came afterwards. Okay? Nigmar malachta v'she'ena nekuva ena nigmar malachta. A needle which already has gotten its eye is complete. One which hasn't had its eye poked is apparently not complete. Hilkach, or incomplete, better word. Hilkach, le'inyan tuma hu the lo avi kli aval betiltu sharia the chazi lakotes. Initial needles, they haven't been eye gouged yet, so they're not susceptible to tuma. But the second they got their pointy, now they're already considered a kli that a person could use on Shabbos to remove splinters. And the Gemara continues, Zimnim de mimlach alayhu. Sometimes he has second thoughts. Remember, needle factory, every piece of metal that goes in there is going to get its eye punched. Okay? It's going to have a hole. But this one not. Umashvilu mana avalhacha denita chararutza adams akar levena gruto. So you can have a needle that has yet been eye punched. It was specifically left unfinished, so that can be used just for these purposes, removing splinters. But if you actually had a proper sewing needle, which had an eye and a point, and then it lost its point or its eye was broken, then you're just going to throw it into the gruta, which I think it disagrees. In the olden days, they weren't throwing out garbage. They didn't have a garbage dump in the old days like we had. It used to be there was nothing that wasn't biodegradable. So if they threw out really broken wood or something that was compostable, it didn't last for a long time. Okay, but metal, you didn't throw out metal necessarily. You kept the grutaot. Grutaot means spare iron, scrap iron, and eventually melt it down to make something else. And they had very little waste back in the day. We've really come a long way. So now that we've allowed, Abai basically upheld what Rava said. Okay, and Rava holds of this standard. Rava says, back to the bottom line, and this is the halacha. In order for something to be handled on Shabbos, it has to have some sort of shame kli. Okay, there is a standard, and certain things, I guess, they were made like that to begin with. And if it's not a kli, you have a much harder time getting it out. Okay, I think that is quite interesting. Basically, what you learn from this is when you need to do something on Shabbos. Yeah, what was that?
Rava held that you have to have a kli. Once you leave the shem kli, then it's moksa, and you can't use it as a kli on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Right? So the broken needle, according to Rava, cannot be used to take out the splinter.
Mm-hmm.
If Yosef counted and said, "What this?"
No, Rava said what he said, and Rav Yosef was first. Rav Yosef is the one who said that, well, it's good enough. Rav Yosef said...
Yosef says, what difference does it make to the splinter?
Yeah, that was his initial thing. Rav Yosef said, I don't care if the sewing needle's broken. The sewing needle got broken, I can still use it for something else.
Correct. Okay.
So I can handle it. And Rava said, no, because it's no longer useful,
Step by step.
it's no longer a kli.
So Rava says, wait a second. is a question of tumor. It loses its, once it's broken, it loses its chain cleat.
Yeah.
But Yosef says,
You-
why do
You're trying to say, you could just say, why don't they make this an argument between Rava and Rav Yosef? Rav Yosef gets Rava gets the last word in here. Rav Yosef was saying, well, as long as the kli has some sort of function remaining, some sort of remaining function, a tzorech right now, my personal tzorech, this object is still technically a kli and I can handle it on Shabbos.
that's what Yosef?
Yeah, and Rava says, sorry, once this was a kli and it had a function like a sewing needle, and now it's lost a major part of its function, even if you have a spot function right now on Shabbos to remove your splinter, you still can't handle it. Go get yourself either a functional sewing needle or a sewing needle that was made deficiently from the outset.
Of those two smaras by themselves,
Yeah.
it seems to me that what Yosef makes more sense.
Yes.
To me, I'm using it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't care what everybody else says.
Yeah.
I'm using it.
Yeah, but the post
And
can
then
hold
they,
like yeah.
wait. And then they play around with the question of comparing Tumah and Shabbos. And who was it? Rabbi says, what's the connection?
There is no connection.
There is no connection.
And Rava says there is. Rava says there is very much a connection.
Okay. But Rava says it, but his argument is not a good argument.
You don't think so? I think
No,
it's
not at all.
Yeah.
What's the connection?
So the answer is, he says it's one standard. Midila inyan tuma, we have the standard of kalim. So too, anything on Shabbos is a kli. If you were to, let's say, punch a hole in the cup.
You just said it doesn't make
No, but here's how it goes. He says the same zero. Just like derisa, when you punch a hole in the cup and the cup can no longer hold water or wine, and now the cup cannot contract impurity, and actually the cup has been purified, so too, that cup, Chazal said, is no longer a kli with regards to Shabbos and should not be handled on Shabbos. He says the gezerah of Chazal of no handling on Shabbos applies to that cup. Okay?
because it's unusable.
Yeah, no, because it's not a kli. And Chazal don't want you handling stuff. Let's go to the Rambam. Chazal don't want you handling things the way you do. So there's going to be a nafkamina. Listen to this nafkamina. We have nuts on the table right now, right? Let's say I bring some nuts. It's yesterday. There's walnuts on the table. We need to crack the walnuts. What are we going to use to crack the walnuts? Is there a hammer here in the shul? That's valid. Let's say we don't have a hammer, and we're not going to put the chairs on top. Can I go outside and take a large rock or a brick, okay, a rock, let's say, large rock, and smash the nuts on Shabbos with the large rock?
No.
Why not?
I'm bothered by that.
No, so and I'm not.
Huh?
I'm not.
You're not bothered, or you're not?
I'm not bothered by it because I looked at the teacher's edition. I saw the bottom line halacha at the end. So no, it's okay. I think you should be eating.
Try. I know
So
the details. I know
yeah.
the rules. I'm trying to understand.
So here's how it goes.
Conceptually,
So here's the conception.
What's happening? What's
So
going on?
here's what's going on here, and I've seen my children do this. When I want to smash nuts on Shabbos, that which I'm smashing with, at least has to be a kli. Even if it's a kli shebalachtu l'isser, it's got to be a kli. My 3-year-old walks outside to the walnut tree, okay, and he takes a large rock that's been there since Sheshis Me'ambratius, and he smashes that nut on the ground. He's not supposed to, but he's a 3-year-old. I can't stop him. I can't. Well, maybe I could, but I have to deal with it. I wouldn't be able to go to shul. Okay, so he smashes it. Because all we're saying, if you have a tzorech to smash those walnuts on Shabbos, at least make sure that which you're using to smash them is a kli. Why? That's a gezerah. Shabbos is so important, midoraisa, that even when we're allowing you to take your splinters out, and they're ouchy, and you have the right to take out a splinter on Shabbos, or you want to smash your nuts because that's what you're having for Shalosh Shuddis, you still have to make sure that which you're using is a kli. And you can't use tam eitzim va'avonim, or things that are not kalim, or things that are disgusting, or things that are exceptionally expensive. Okay? Yeah, or things that have been. That's a good example. Or things that were kalim once and have now been buckled. They said, yeah, even though it makes us far, because yes, I want to take out splinters and I want to smash nuts. Afilu hachi kedusha Shabbos is such that Chazal said you're going to have this unusual use. Make sure what you're using is a kli, the type of thing that can contract impurity. That's the gzera. And that's how Rava understands it. Now, does that make sense? That's basically the takana.
Yeah, it's a complete different picture of what I had in mind beforehand.
Yeah.
And the definition, when we think of Moksa,
Oh, how about this? I'll read you what Rambam says.
what you said originally, the definition, the whole concept is you have to be and if it's not a kli or was a kli and is no longer a kli, none of those can be used for what we call it. Not the way I originally thought.
Yeah.
What about the idea that it has to be prepared before Shabbat? In other words, I have a nut cracker.
Yes.
And so I'm going to use that nut cracker on Shabbat. On Shabbat afternoon, we're having Shabbat too. I can't find that nut cracker. I looked all over the house.
Okay.
I don't know what happened to it.
So take a
So
different.
I grab a hammer.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it wasn't prepared before.
That's fine. It was prepared. A hammer is a kli. It was a kli when Shabbos came in. Yeah, it was a kli. It's not like you built the kli on Shabbos. You didn't wedge the stick part of the hammer into the metal head. Okay. So
Now read the Rambam.
So let me read you what Rambam says. No, until now I haven't read the Rambam. I just showed you a chart that comes from Hilchos Shabbos, Perek 25 and 26. But now I'm going to read you the Rambam's explanation of this. By the way, there are those who disagree with the Rambam. Okay? The Ravid there, for example. I'm just going to tell you an idea, but there are parts that he agrees with. Sarucha Chamim L'Teltel.
Before you start,
Yeah.
you send us, or send me, and I'll send it to the guys, a copy of that chart.
Yes, I'll send it. I'll send after we finish this, and also I'm going to now share this on my screen because you're seeing it. So I have to figure out how to share screen. Stop share screen. Restart screen.
That answers, that part answers your question.
Yeah. So
What a kli is, a kli makes no difference. That's the kli. And a kli, therefore, is always usable. Even if they normally use it this, or people use it because it's a kli. And every kli is used.
yeah, every kli has a use.
Every kli is not mostly inclusive.
Okay. So the gentleman online should be able to see this well. So I'm going to read this to you. Asru chachamim litaltel miktzat devarim b'Shabbat kederech she'oseh b'chol. The sages prohibited us to handle certain things on Shabbos, miktzat, not everything, but certain things on Shabbos, as you would during the weekday. Umipnei ma naga'u b'isur zeh. Why they come up with this? Now this is the part that's disputable. Amaru uma im hizhiru neviim b'tzivu sheloyu hiluchach b'Shabbos kiluchach b'chol. The Nevi'im said, make sure you don't even walk on Shabbos like you walk on weekday. Don't run. Okay? You be more relaxed on Shabbos. V'lo sichat Shabbos kisichat hachol. And the way you talk on Shabbos, even a conversation on Shabbos, cannot be the way you speak during the weekday. As it says, v'daber davar. That's Isaiah says. We read this as the Haftarah on Yom Kippur. Kal v'chomer shelo yeh tiltul b'Shabbat tiltul b'chol. Handling objects on Shabbos should not be handling like you do on the weekday. Kedei shelo yeh kiyom chol beinav. It shouldn't be like a weekday in his eyes. Shabbos especially, we don't even handle things on Shabbos. We avo l'hagbia l'takem kilim l'tek kilim b'pinav l'finav. Maybe he'll just lift things up, move things around. He'll change the furniture on Shabbos. You know that? You like that? You think that the couch should be where the table is, and the table should be where the couch is. You can't even do that on Shabbos. Why? Both are kelim that you can handle on Shabbos. No, don't even do that. Omi bayis l'bayis, moving things around. You know, maybe you should move house on Shabbos. You know, take your table over to the neighbor's house so you can have a larger Shabbos meal. Or even to set aside stones, things like that. Gather wood. Sharei hu batel v'yoshev b'veito. Person has a lot more time on Shabbos. He's sitting at home. Then we'll take time to. We vakesh davar shitasek bo. or just look for doing something. He wants to busy himself. By the way, what if you find time, you have time on Shabbos, what should you be doing? Studying Torah. V'nimtza shalosh shavat. Turns out a person, if he actually has time to do whatever he wants with his kalim on Shabbos, he's doing no melacha, he basically wasted Shabbos. He didn't rest, or he didn't desist. Uvitel hatam shnemar b'Torah l'man yanuach. The whole point was to rest. So he ended up making Shabbos very busy. Also, when he starts looking over and handling kalim that are used for isser, hammers and pens, you might actually start doing melacha. Some people don't actually have a profession. By this means a craft. They're actually doing something, creating something. They're on vacation all day. People who just take trips and people sit around, the lazy people, God bless them. Every day they're not doing melacha. If they could just continue doing what they do every other day, they'll continue handling whatever it is they're doing. No melacha. What's going to happen? Then you'd find that they didn't actually do anything on Shabbos. They didn't rest from anything on Shabbos. When we say no handling things on Shabbos, it's something that's across the board. Right? No one handles hammers on Shabbos. Because of this, the Chazal decided to give us this Isser of Tiltul. The only thing they told us that you can handle on Shabbos is Kalim, implements, shetzarich lahem. He actually needs them for a purpose. By the way, from the Rambam, I gave an example. Your clothing is Kalim, right? As long as it's made out of, technically speaking, if it's made out of synthetics, it might not be halachically a kli that could get tumah, but that's something we discussed last year. Okay? So you're not even supposed to be touching your clothing on Shabbos. Okay? If you have a pile of freshly folded laundry, socks and underwear, right? And you want to put that in your drawer, you can't just do that on Shabbos unless you needed the space or unless you have some other purpose. Or, like I said on the chart, you have to look, does this fit the permissible circumstances? But someone threw a winter coat, that you don't intend to wear and you have no other purpose for it on Shabbos, and it's just there, and you don't need its place, and it's no harm is going to come to it. It doesn't fit anywhere in the chart. So that winter coat is what we would call muktzah. You should be handling on Shabbos, or a fork or something else like that. And Rambam continues into the next parak. He says, Yesh klisha malachtu leheter, and yesh klisha malachtu leisser. And he says, Kol klisha malachtu leheter, bein haya le'etz or cheres, whatever it is, muter letaltu b'Shabbos, for the following reasons. And then he gives examples of kalim that are usser, that have a malachtu leisser. He gives the examples of when you can handle those.
Isn't there, let's say, a coat?
Yeah.
A collision malachta heter?
It is malachta heter, and even that, stam, you're not allowed to handle. Only if you have one of the tzrachim. But if there's no tzorech, then you can't handle it. And then he says, v'chol she'eino kli, kol she'eino kli, and he gives examples, asur l'taltalon. Okay? So you can't handle it. Not a kli, you can't handle it, period. Yeah, what's the question?
Technically speaking, if you have in the summertime,
Yeah.
you have a winter coat that falls off the hanger.
Yeah.
Now, that's you can't move that until a coat.
Yeah. Maybe tzorech, you can't move it. If you have,
you have to let it stay there on the ground.
Yeah. If it's tzorech atzmo, which we said is preservation of the implement, it's going to get destroyed somehow. People are going to trample it or something.
No.
Yeah.
It just fell.
Yeah. So
It just fell.
yes, if it doesn't fit on the chart of any of these tzorachim that the Chazal mentioned, so stam usher to handle it. Rabbi Soloveitchik, I read, didn't like people sitting at the Shabbos table before Kiddush, right? Come home. So you have one of these guys, not only is he going to say Shalom Aleichem and Eishes Chayil and bless his 15 children, he's also going to say that Yehi Ratzon, and I made my bed, and God bless me the Shabbos, maybe even say it in English, He who's King of Kings, etc., right? So it's going to be another 20 minutes before Kiddush. And you're sitting there, you cannot touch the cup. They haven't given you your grape juice yet. There's no gefilte fish on your plate. No touching the fork. No handling the fork. You set the table, that was for a purpose. But now you're sitting at the table with a nice setting in front of you. You have no reason to handle any of that.
The
You know?
rub was not to set the table until after a motzi?
Well, that's a different reason. It could be that's connected to eating the bread. You definitely should not be bringing bread to the table before you say kiddush. That's clear in the Talmud. Yeah, but we do. So now we have challah board, so we cover the challah. But really, if you're like the Vilna Gaon points out in the Tosfos, the assumption was there's no food on the table until you say kiddush. Okay? And by the way, food meant they bring the tray which actually has the food, the plate, and the fork, and the knife, and everything. It used to be when they showed up at their sitting area for kiddush, what was it? It was a lounge-like chair, what they call a mita, and everybody would lounge around the central eating area, and then they would say the kiddush, and then they bring in the trays which have the food and the utensils. So they didn't, and the bread. So then after you wash your hands.
The rub was not being like the grub.
Yeah, well, the grubs usually right.
There's a famous story that he was once a speaker at the convention, and
Yes.
he came in, after davening, and the table was all completely
Set.
set.
Yeah.
And he made all the people, all the waiters,
Remove the food?
remove all the food.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're not supposed to.
They said, but you're not going to invite me to go there.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's what they reply in Pesach, for example. Why is it that the old halachas refer to a Pesach table that is not set? It's only after Kiddush that they bring the Kiarat HaSeder. The Kiarat HaSeder has the foods that he's going to eat. It has the charoses and the Korban Pesach and a piece of the Chagiga. Right, your Seder plate has a piece of Korban Pesach on it, I assume. At least, that's what we were planning to do. So that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, and oh boy, there's a next sugya. I feel sorry that we certainly will not have time to see this. I hope Rabbi Nadel is going to touch this with you guys. But we're going to talk about Asuve Yanuka. Okay? What is Asuve Yanuka? That is a major dispute between the Rishon and what we're talking about here. And it actually has a nafkamina. I wanted to get to the Mishnah Berurah, and I'll say it outside first. There is this idea that you could do certain things for the newborn child. Right? I'm going to say, take care of the newborn child. There is a distinction that Rashi brings that is not accepted by everybody. Rashi says, indeed, on the first day that the child is born, but on subsequent days, perhaps not. And that's a chumrah. That chumrah is reiterated by the Rush. It's brought in the Tur. Okay? And the Tur says it explicitly, and there are Achronim who mention it. But the Mishnah Berurah points out that the Vilna Gaon pointed out that not only Rishon held of such a distinction, helping the newborn, doesn't matter if it's today or yesterday, this child is a newborn, and that which is permissible to do for him is permissible across the board. The distinction is non-Talmudic. Okay? So just to know, that's a line in the Mishnah Berurah there. It's a gra that I have published here. Maybe you want to, I put it over here. You'll be able to see it. It's a difficult Rashi. This sugya basically brings together ideas found in Kuf Kaf Gimel, and we're going to see later in Kuf Kaf Zayin and Kuf Mem Zayin. Kuf Kaf Tet and Kuf Mem Zayin. So let's go into it a little bit. You haven't gotten there yet. We're on Kuf Kaf Gimel, but we're going to see, or perhaps we should address this once we get to those other sugyos. That there's a little bit of I wouldn't say a misunderstanding, but perhaps it's unclear who says what. So let's see just the beginning of this. What?
What is the case we're talking about?
Asuve Yanuka. Okay, Asuve Yanuka. And by the way, I don't know what this is. The Rashi says it means that you're straightening his limbs. Okay, sometimes limbs get disjointed or out of place. So that's something they did for the child. They would, put the joint back into it. Has anybody ever seen someone pop? This happens to children even as old as 5 years old. Their elbow comes out of place. The forearm dislodges from the socket of the upper arm. Oh, that happened? That happened to my daughter like 5 times. We're at the same age. And I remember it's just like, it goes limp, and she's like crying, but it's uncomfortable. And the doctor just knows how to do it. Stick it right back in. And he taught me how to do it myself. Okay, because running around looking for him, they're like, pop it back in. Okay, so this happens. But maybe that's not what it's talking about necessarily. There's a certain form that is permissible, and there's a certain form that's perhaps not permissible on Shabbos. Everything's permissible not on Shabbos, but Chazal gave a line, and that's where the dispute lies. Okay. Also, which of the Tanaim we hold like, or which of the Asuva Yanuka as what?
As vomiting.
Yeah. Well, causing the child to vomit, or he has a problem with vomiting, because that's where Rabbeinu Chananel says that they have something wrong with their palate in the Garon. I'll read it over here. It says here, Aval Korcha B'Gan, Rabbeinu Chananel Pirish Kishnofelas Orlas Hagaron Shelatinok. The Orlas Hagaron, apparently it's something that's not the tonsils, but there's something over here that's falling down. So, Misima Chaya Etzba Latoch Piv, the midwife sticks her fingers into the child's mouth. Umisalechet Orlo Limkoma. She pushes that thing in his throat back into its place. Sometimes it makes him gag a little bit and he'll vomit something. Okay, so that is what they're referring to here. Asuva Yanuka. Okay, Asuva Yanuka. Well, yeah, so that's Rabbeinu Chananel, and that's what, for example, the Torah mentions. Okay, the Torah mentions. People knew this. I was going to talk about this the way that Rashi has the Gemara. At least Rashi's general understanding. We're talking about bones, limbs. That's the way why? Because that's the way the Gemara and the Rambam understood it. The Gemara and the Rambam thought that this Gemara is like Rashi's. It's talking about the general limbs and bones.
It's like Rabbi Nachman, that it's awesome. Do we think that we let a child who's just born, or even a young child, go with his bones?
So Rav Nachman would say there's a certain thing that's usher, but Rav Nachman also says there's certain things that are mutter at least all the time, even on Shabbos. Okay, that's that which they prohibit, but there's something lesser they could do, and by tomorrow they'll be able to do it or something like that. Yeah.
So that's what they're talking about here. Rav Nachman says a child dislocated arm, don't touch it.
I don't know if it's necessarily dislocated, just not straight. I don't know what it is. I've never delivered a child and seen what exactly they do, but they talk about, for example, lipuf as opposed to asuve. Okay? And lipuf means swaddling. They swaddle the child nice and tight in a certain way. That way it keeps everything in position. And that would be permitted. Yeah, but I'm talking about swaddling, which has sort of an effect of keeping the limbs in the right way. So that would be permissible. Rav Nachman prohibits asuve, but would about lipuf. That is a resolution that Tosfos and others offer in this understanding.
Don't know what any of that means.
I know what lipuf means. It means this type of swaddling.
I see that in the hospital.
Okay, but that's not exactly
I don't know what
a suvi. So that I guess it's another thing that's much more advanced. Somehow, like I said, I do not know if that's necessarily because I've never done this. If it's talking about actual dislocated joints, but there is some straightening going on. And they also make a distinction that we're going to see on a different daf of Gemara. There are some that involve the extremities, and some actually involve the spine, the vertebrae. So
again, is there a suggestion to say that we don't deal with this? That mean that us to do that on Shabbos?
Yes, there are certain things that they prohibit on Shabbos because it's not a danger to the child if you wait until not Shabbos.
We don't know what they are.
I don't know it myself enough, but I do understand the Gemara enough to say that there are a certain standard. If it's in the spine, for example, and it's not a threat to the child's life, so we'll do it. So hold on one second. A message. Yeah.
Some things, if you don't do right away, you're going to cripple the child.
I mean, obviously,
If it can be done after Shabbat, well, look, if it's something that has to be now, you're going to let them grow with a broken arm.
No, they definitely don't do that. Yeah.
we don't understand what it's talking about.
So the general halacha follows the more makel opinion, but there are certain things apparently that are still prohibited, as long because it's not a threat, because they consider it boneh. It's not in our Gemara. Like I said, this crosses over a few dafs. No, I think it is because one of them, the Gra, okay, the Vilna Gaon, follows what the Mishnah Berurah brings what the Vilna Gaon says, that Rashi's distinction on Kuf Mem Zayin doesn't apply. That is, let's say you had a child like this. Rashi understood it saying that the day he's born, you have more of a permissibility, but if the child is in need of certain treatments, let's say the following days, you're not allowed to do so because it's Shabbos. If it's Shabbos and you miss the first day, so now there is a prohibition involved. And the Gra said, no, that's not, don't understand the Gemara this way. You don't need to understand the Gemara that way. And that's not the way most Rishonim understand, so we don't hold that way. Okay? If it's permissible when the child is born on Shabbos, it's permissible any other day that is Shabbos. If the child was born on Thursday, comes Shabbos, they need to do this, what Chazal mentioned, so they should do it. The general opinion is to be lenient in this regard. Okay, so I guess it's 11:18. So should we go ahead or should we have to stop? So I'll send you the information right now. Say goodbye to the guys online, and now I'll start the upload online so that they'll be able to catch it next time. Be good, everybody.